Starship Troopers Extermination is a co-op FPS that drops you in the world of Starship Troopers to exterminate over-the-top numbers of arachnids because obviously the only good bug is a dead bug. Unfortunately, the only thing I can really say that the game does well is making the world feel like Starship Troopers. The other aspects of the game range from mediocre to outright bad. However, while some poor decisions were definitely made with the game, there may still be some hope for the game, at least for a few people. So, a brief overview of what's on offer here. The primary game mode is a 4 to 16 player co-op series of missions that consist of around 4 varieties of missions. Most involve either building or defending a base while being assaulted by waves of enemies. There is also a mode for smaller groups of 4 players where you go underground and destroy nests. This is very similar to the campaign missions. There is also a 25 mission solo campaign that is classified as a 25 mission tutorial, which is probably appropriate. In those missions, you play as a recruit reporting to Rico, while you lead a squad of 3 of the worst NPCs I've ever encountered through caves to destroy nests. I'm going to briefly talk about the solo campaign because, well, it's brief. The entire 25 missions took less than 2 hours, with most missions clocking in at 3 to 5 minutes. What you're seeing on screen is about halfway through the campaign. As you will see, these missions are short. Additionally, there's almost nothing to them. You sprint for a few seconds, bugs spawn as you cross some invisible threshold, and you kill bugs for a few seconds. Then you do it again. The last 4 missions add a few additional steps, asking you to interact with some objects while putting the mission on a 5 to 6 minute timer. Other than that, they really don't do much. These missions are some of the most bland missions I've experienced in a shooter, maybe ever. And I say that as somebody who's played and loves the Earth Defense Force games. Enemies pose little threat and don't really do much to challenge the player. The location variety is non-existent, as you'll really be only playing a variety of caves that all look pretty much exactly like what you're seeing on screen. The only interaction you have with Rico is a brief intro at the start, and then a couple sentences between missions. This dialogue is super basic, and I don't even think the biggest fans are going to get much out of it. As mentioned, these NPC troops you bring with you are absolutely terrible. They get stuck on everything, they frequently yell about attacking enemies that are either dead or haven't spawned yet. They have absolutely zero evasive ability, and instead they take attacks to the face until they just fall over. The only good thing I'll say about the campaign is that it is an effective way to level a class. You could mostly level the class with just one less than 2 hour playthrough of the campaign. The only thing you can't do is level your weapons, because of the reasons that makes sense, I'm sure, to someone. So the single player campaign is pretty much throwaway. What about the multiplayer? So the co-op multiplayer is in a better place, although it's still not good. In these, you queue up and get dropped into a mission where you complete some objectives, which typically involve building or defending a base and killing lots of bugs. In one version, you collect resources and take it to a base to defend. In another, you mostly just defend a base while collecting resources. In yet another one, you will reach a base and just defend it. These are the missions outside of the one where you go underground and destroy nests with that small group. Nothing interesting happens in these missions. You mindlessly kill bugs, you build some walls, you reload, you kill some more bugs. It's super simple, although obviously anything that you can play in co-op has a little more variety to it because there's other players involved. But again, there just isn't much to this. One somewhat interesting system is the ability to pick other objectives to perform during the mission, like killing a specific number of arachnids during the mission. This was kind of an interesting addition that allowed you to get some more experience, and it added a little variety to the gameplay. Still not much, but it's something. There is base building, but it's fairly simple. You can drop walls, towers, turrets that you can use to defend the base. You can lay down ammo and bunkers as well. It's all just fine. I didn't find it that interesting and typically let others handle the building. As you do missions, you're rewarded with experience that help unlock new perks, weapons, enhancements, and customization. This system is pretty limited, but as with any type of progression, it does feel good to unlock new things. With all that description out of the way, there are a few more things I do want to talk about. First is the performance. The performance here is abysmal. Initially, with default settings, I was getting less than 20 frames per second. I set the resolution to 1440, I dropped graphics settings from ultra to high, and then from high to medium, and then I was able to get mostly a steady 60 FPS. That is with a 3070 Ti, which is still, at the very least, middle of the road, if not a little better than that. In addition, there are a lot of jank and some bugs. As far as bugs, the main one that I kept running into is being disconnected from missions as it was trying to load. I also had a super weird thing where it reset my resolution. I'd just been playing with graphics settings a while ago, like a couple minutes ago, but it was the first time I've ever seen a game quite literally change my resolution while I was playing. It went into like a windowed mode on my desktop. Very weird. And then there's also cases where bugs were forming out of nowhere, the arachnid kind, disappearing and then teleporting, especially in those single-player missions. Bugs kept getting stuck on everything, so they'd sometimes just stand there. NPCs in the campaign can seemingly fall into the world, in addition to getting stuck and lost everywhere. In fact, I'm not sure I ever finished a mission with all of my squad. Also, when you complete a solo mission, there's an awkward 5 to 10 second pause where the game seems to be waiting for some kind of polling to finish so that it can confirm that you've met all the objectives and that the mission is complete. Then it loads the victory message and finishes the game. But it's a very weird 5 to 10 seconds while you're just standing there waiting for it to decide that the mission is done. Honestly, there's only 2 positives that I can say about this experience, which also leads me into who I think still may be interested in this game. First, there is a lot of fan service here. When you load into these missions, they feel like Starship Troopers. These feel like the arachnids from the movie. The structures, the weapons, the base, the enemies, the cutscenes. This is all very authentic, at least in my opinion. Although I wouldn't exactly call myself a fan of the series. There is also something fantastic about the end of co-op missions, where the dropship is coming and you're sprinting towards the dropship while being chased by bugs. All of this comes together and it does feel like Starship Troopers. And I think that fan service is going to be enough for some people. The combat is just passable enough that if you really love Starship Troopers and you're willing to put up with lowering your settings and dealing with some of the bugs, and you're looking for a simple experience to just experience this world and experience being in this world, this may absolutely still be for you. And you may want to pick it up at some point, but probably not right now. The other positive is that the game does have a solid enough base that I think it could be improved into a solidly good game, with some effort. Missions need a lot more variety, weapons need more customization, not just the unlocks. The performance needs to be overhauled, the non-arachnid bugs need to be addressed. As far as the arachnid bugs, I do feel like maybe they need to do a little more with the enemies to make them a little more interesting. I realize you're dealing with the source material there, but they just don't do much. If they do manage to do all of that, there could be a good game here. The other 2 things I'm going to talk about are the price and the 1.0 release of this game. This is probably my most negative point because honestly, there's really no excuse for this. In no way, shape, or form is this game worth $50. Additionally, this game should not be out of early access in this state, particularly reading that the performance has only gotten worse over the last year. I'm going to stop short of speculating why it happened and how they got there, but what I can say for sure is that this shouldn't have happened. This game is way overpriced and was not ready, and there is no way that the developer didn't know both of those things were true. If you're going to buy this, I would wait for them to hopefully polish it up a bit, and I wouldn't buy it anywhere near full price. I also would only do that if you are a huge Starship Troopers fan. Otherwise, I would skip this. So, I'll leave it there. If you liked the video, maybe hit the like button or subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one.